So we'll go ahead and get started. I think most people are here. Um, so today we have the digital transition with Michael Wright of Orthodent Lab and Thomas from EasyRX. Michael's been in the orthodontic lab business for 18 years. As a second generation lab owner, he recognizes the transition from traditional plaster submissions to the full digital workflow. In 2008, he built EasyRX system to address the needs of laboratories facing this change. He currently is the owner of ODL Ortho Lab and often speaks about challenges labs and practices face when switching to digital. So I'm gonna. Are y'all ready to get started, Michael and Thomas?
Ready to go.
All right.
Yep.
Well, take it away.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen here and just let me know if everything looks okay on your side.
Yeah, that looks good.
Everything looks good? Well, great. Well, so I started with EasyRX back in June of last year, and I handle sales for the company. And Michael, as Cade said, essentially started EasyRX. So this is an exciting time for us as we kind of, are part of this digital transition. And we see what's happening in the market right now for both practices and labs, and we're excited to be part of both sides of that equation. And so what we'd like to do ultimately is just talk with you about EasyRX and where we've come over the past 18 months, and some of the things that we're adding to really help the workflow for both practices and labs. So I don't know if many of you may have taken a look at EasyRX in the past, and so I wanted to spend a little bit of time just showing you some of the things that we've added, and then ultimately dive into the software and really show you how it could benefit your lab and the practices you work with. So that said, EasyRX is a cloud-based software. It's universal. It's for any practice or lab in the orthodontic field. And if you think about it, there's really two sides to EasyRX. We have our practice side and the lab side of EasyRX. And so originally when the software was designed, it was designed for the workflow of the lab. And we have pretty robust lab side of EasyRX where you're able to track production, the workflow of the lab, invoicing solutions. But over the last 18 months, we've been adding a lot of practice-focused features like practice management integration, intraoral scanner integrations. So where practices are actually, really responding well to this, and so we focused our selling to practices. And what that means ultimately for you as a lab is that you're able to utilize EasyRX in a very cost-effective way because practices are paying for our services, and they're able to pay for EasyRX with monthly and annual subscriptions. And this is something that kind of go into the reasons why practices would pay to utilize EasyRX here in just a second. Lab, you're still able to utilize or take advantage of our monthly subscriptions with our enterprise or our standard and premium plans as well. So one of the things I hear from almost every lab that I talk with is, Thomas, why would a practice choose to pay to submit a prescription? And there's a few things that I wanted to point out that we find when we're presenting EasyRX to practices that really help. And one of those is an enhanced digital workflow. So most practices, when you talk to them and you ask them, how are you keeping track of the prescriptions that you're submitting? They'll say we have a spiral notebook, or maybe at best, an Excel spreadsheet where they're able to keep track of all their prescriptions. And so ultimately that leads to, more phone calls, emails, scans, faxes. There's so many different ways that they're submitting and keeping track of cases. We consolidate that workflow in EasyRX into one place, and it really helps create an efficient work environment at the practice. So we're saving, staff members time to ultimately help them do what they do best, and that's, working with the patients here at the practice and not keeping track of paperwork. So most practices submit to multiple labs, I found. So every lab has their own form, as you know, and so we give them a universal form where they can, again, keep track of those prescriptions in one dashboard and one workspace. And that helps eliminate, messy, incomplete handwritten forms. And how many times do you receive a prescription where maybe the acrylic color is missing? So you have to go back and make a phone call, send an email to the practice. We streamline that communication between the practice and the lab. And then practices, they obviously want to stay up with industry trends. And right now we're in this digital age. So, every day practices are getting calls from intraoral scanner companies, 3D printing companies that are trying to sell their new products to the practices. So, they recognize that, patient's perception and the patient experience is really important. So EasyRX really bridges the gap in that communication. So if they have an intraoral scanner, now we provide a way for them to ultimately attach those scans digitally in EasyRX and submit those to your lab. And it's in a secure communication, so it's HIPAA compliant. And kind of moving into that, why would a practice choose EasyRX? So we give them one application to manage all their appliance prescriptions. It's universal, like I said. So let's say a practice is submitting cases to your lab, but they're also submitting cases to a lab in Georgia or New York. They're able to create a prescription in a universal workspace, so it's the same prescription form no matter where they're submitting cases. And we have integrations with Dolphin Practice Management, Cloud9, Ortho. And so those are three of the biggest practice management softwares. So we're able to save them a lot of time on the front end when they're creating a prescription. So rather than having to fill out a form, I'll show you here in a minute, we pull in that patient information automatically. And then our integrations with the intraoral scanners, we automatically attach those cases or attach those scans to the case, so they receive those and send those to you very easily. So they create a prescription, they attach the digital files, and ultimately they're able to track everything in EasyRX. And this is reducing common errors. Again, it's getting away from that paper prescription form, and it's making it more efficient for practices. So in just a minute, we're going to take a look at the software itself, but this is an example of our prescription workspace. You can see it's very clean, and that's one thing that Michael and I have talked about. When he was first designing the software, they were getting the paper forms that were not legible. So we wanted to create a workspace where, for example, this is what do we have here? A Holly retainer with Adam's clasp, and it's very clean. Everything is outlined here, so when you receive it, it's going to be in the same form. They're able to manage and track all of their cases in one place. So this is our dashboard, and we've actually added some really cool enhancements to the dashboard, which I'll show in just a second. So since we've flipped the model on basically selling to practices, in November of 2015 is when we started selling to practices. We've had over 200 practices sign up that are paying for EasyRX. And I think we just had our record month last month. About 20 practices signed up in the month of March. And now that we're providing EasyRX at no cost to labs, we've actually gone from 10 labs in 2015 to 55 right now that have signed up. So we make it super easy for labs to accept cases. Our basic account is free, so you're able to receive cases from any practice that's signed up with EasyRX. You're able to track that case, download the digital files. We have a 3D previewer built in, so you can see the files, scrub the files before you send them off over to the printer if you're printing. And it really helps with the workflow on your side too, because you're able to track and manage those cases in a very similar dashboard to what the practice has. Now, something we're excited to launch here in the next few weeks is our 3D model feature and module, and I'm going to show you a little preview of that. So we've had a lot of requests from labs of printing 3D models. They say now we have a few different softwares that we're communicating and trying to clean the models up with. It'd be great if y'all could add that feature. So we listened, and we've actually created a really handy module where you can add a base, trim the model, add the patient name, and basically send it directly to the printer. So we're excited to do that. And then obviously, if there's ever a time, when you get into EasyRX, if you want to take a look at our premium or our enterprise workflow accounts, we can do that as well at a later time. But today, I'd ultimately like just to show you the basics and take it from there. So one of the things that we'll do for you as a lab, we will list you on our Connected Labs page. So this is a little screenshot of our Connected Labs page, which we have on our webpage. And we'll also provide some marketing materials for you to introduce EasyRX to your customers. We've had a lot of success with this. We can do marketing campaigns with you. But as we grow, there's going to be a lot more practices that know about EasyRX and want to connect with your lab. So I guess any questions so far, or anything you'd like to add, Mike?
No, doing great so far.
Awesome. So any questions from y'all?
Y'all can ask live. They can hear y'all and see you.
Okay. Well, cool. So what I'd like to do first is kind of take you through the workflow for what the practice would experience creating a prescription in EasyRX. And we're cloud-based. So the great thing about that, and practices love this because they're able to run EasyRX on every workstation in the practice. And, if they're taking scans in a separate room, I know they do that in a lot of practices, they can have EasyRX pulled up on the computer in that scanning room. And so when they log in, basically it brings them to their dashboard. And this is the command center for every prescription that they've created. They're able to track all submitted cases by the patient name, the office. So if they have 5 or 6 locations, we can enter all of their locations. They can drill down and search for cases by location. If they have multiple doctors, we can do the same thing there. So they can drill down to search by the doctor that submitted the case. They can see which lab they're connected with and the cases that they're submitting there, the date that it's needed back by, when it's received back from your lab, and then delivered to the patient. So part of what we do during training is we really try to help the practices get acclimated with EasyRX. So since this is something new to them, they've really never been able to track the workflow on their cases. So, we have these tabs over here. So once they've submitted a case and you've checked the case in at your lab, it will shift over to our checked in tab. So on a daily basis, they can go in, see what's being worked on, click on the ship tab, and they'll be able to see what's on the way back to their lab, to their practice rather. And then once they've received it back, we have a receive tab. So now they can look at this and see, okay, what's outstanding? What patient hasn't come back in to, get fitted on their retainer? They can click on that. And then ultimately that affords them the ability to track who needs to come back in. So those are just some of the kind of the high level features on our dashboard page. So creating a prescription is super simple. They can either click here and add some basic patient information. But what we found is with our integrations, and I'm going to show you the Dolphin integration. So a patient comes into a practice, they have the patient card pulled up at the chair side. Directly from the patient card now we have an integrations tab built in where they can click and launch EasyRX. So that pulls in the patient name, birthday, the day and time of their next appointment. And if they've already come in prior to this visit, we'll list all of their case information along with any digital scans that they've scanned for that patient. So let's say a patient comes in and they need a remake. They can just go to that case, click on request a remake, and it communicates that directly to your lab. So they're not going to have to shuffle paperwork, give you a call, find out, where is that prescription. Everything is managed right within EasyRX. So let's go to create a prescription. It's pulled in the patient or the appointment day and time. So they'll let you know we need to have that. We need to have it back by the 12th. By default, we're going to request that it comes back a day in advance of the appointment day and time. So let's say they forget to add the date needed. By default, it would let you know that they need it back by the 13th. They'll add their office location, select your lab, and go to create prescription. So in the prescription workspace, think of this as, the form that they're filling out for your lab. And what we're going to do during the onboarding process with the practice is we're going to help them create templates for their most used appliances. So if you are, if they're prescribing Holly retainers to your lab, we're going to create a template for those retainers where they can, with the click of a button, create the prescription. It automatically imports all of the parts onto the workspace. And if they need to make any adjustments, all they would need to do is click on the part and drag and move as needed. We also have a parts and appliance library where, let's say they wanted to add springs to the retainer, they could just type in spring, and this pulls up every type of spring that we have, which is over 500 right now. So we have over 500 parts and appliances in here. So they would just click on recurve spring, or they can drag and drop the recurve springs onto the workspace and place them in the proper location. And that's saved for this case specifically.
Hey, Thomas, I have a question.
Sure.
If we have our own part, can y'all create that for us? Like we have a special spring that a doctor likes. Can y'all create that for us and it be in the library?
So I guess the short answer is yes, we can do that. What we'd probably want to do first is just search through the library, because understandably it may be named something different.
Right.
We have a pretty robust library, so we would just want to search and make sure that it's not in there. But if it's not, then it's something that we can do for you.
Okay.
So from here, there's any appliance that you're creating that has an acrylic part on the appliance, this little paintbrush will be highlighted. And so from here, this is where, JVC has provided a really cool color chart for us. And this is something that can be customized, so if your lab has some decals that you want to add into your color chart, we can do that for you. But this is a great way for the practice to interact with the patient. And let's say they wanted to go ahead and select colors for the upper and lower, add notes. They can do that all here while they're creating the prescription. And that's going to save to the case. So when you receive it, all of the notes will be there. Something that we really are seeing a lot of is that practices are starting to use their iTero scanners or their 3Shape scanners to submit cases. And so we have a really cool integration with iTero where we link to their MyAlignTech account, and we'll go in and capture the scans that they've taken for that patient. So all they'll need to do is add their patient or case ID right here from MyAlignTech, and we'll go in and retrieve those scans and automatically attach those files. So they're not going to have to go out, export them from the scanner. They're not going to have to send them separately to you from the scanner. They're all going to be attached to the case. So while they're attaching, I wanted to show you, we have a little 3D preview button built in here. And so this is something that you can utilize on the lab side, or a lot of practices like to do this before they send the case, because they're able to tell whether or not maybe the scan, has a few holes, or let's say even a floating edge on the side. And I'll show you an example. This was a case that was sent to us by a lab that we work with that used our file scrubbing feature. So they previewed the file. They saw some minor holes. You can see even this floating edge. And we have a file scrubber that's built in to the software that will automatically go in and clean the model up for you. That's something that a lot of practices and labs utilize. So here our files are attached. Basically the case is ready to be sent over. But let's say they wanted to add a note or a comment. We have easy comments where they can go in and preload comments like, please, polish acrylic finely, and attach that to the case, or they can type in a custom note. And we're going to go ahead and proceed to submit. Our checkout page just has some verification information. They're able to select what staff member took the impression, who's actually submitting the case. And this is where, one of the things I like to point out too is not only for digital. So let's say a practice is still submitting plaster models to you. They can select the plaster model source right here and still track the case through EasyRX. So we have a lot of practices that do both. But for this, you can see the iTero scan is attached, and they're going to go ahead and submit the case. So that completes the first section of our taskbar. And I'm going to log over to our lab dashboard. So this is actually what you would see when you log into EasyRX. On the lab side, this is the basically the workflow dashboard, and you'll see a push notification. So Anthony McConnell's case has come through. Here it is on our dashboard. We would go to click to check that case in. So that's going to let the practice know that we're working on it. We've received it. That eliminates the phone call or an email just to make sure that you've got everything. We see some comments are attached, so we can click there. It says, please, polish acrylic very finely. So we acknowledge that. Everything's clean right here. We have our colors. The comments also listed right here. And then at the bottom of the page, we see our STL files. So currently, if you were going to extract those STL files, you would just click, and those would download locally onto your computer. The file in our 3D previewer.
Yeah, I think we missed some of that. You glitched. Back up about 15 seconds.
Sure.
Oh, there we are.
Can you see it now?
Is it the model?
No, I'm back on the actual prescription.
Oh yeah, we're on there. We're on there with you.
Okay. So I was just pointing out currently, if you wanted to look at our 3D previewer, you can look at, excuse me, you can look at the files in our 3D previewer. Can you see that on the screen right now, Cade? Cade, could you see that file?
Yes.
Okay, cool. But what we're getting ready to launch is our 3D module. So let's say a practice sends a case to you that you want to clean up and prepare to print. We would launch into our EasyRX 3D module, and that would pull the rough STL into EasyRX 3D. This is still under development, so it's a little slower than it would normally be.
You want to launch it in Firefox?
Here we go. So here's our file that we pulled in. We can easily trim the model by dragging these dots to the areas where we want. So let's say we were wanting to make a horseshoe model. we understand that it's the cost of printing is not very inexpensive. So if you want to trim the model and save some costs, we're going to help you do that. And you can trim the file right here. Are most of you printing right now, or are y'all still, is this something y'all are looking at doing?
Raise your hand if you're printing already. 1, 2, 3. Can y'all see them? It's kind of blurry.
Yes.
Somewhere. Like 4 or 5, 6. Okay.
So let me try to do this. It is not launching here properly. What is this? I guess what software are y'all using mostly for trimming and adding the patient name and ID for prints?
I can just yell it out. 3Shape?
Yeah, mine's built in 3Shape. The model builder.
So we got to answer 3Shape, the model builder. Did you put their name in there too? Anybody else use NetFab? You have used that? What is it? Oh, 3Shape and Dental Wings. So you are doing this in the web browser right now?
We are.
Okay. So the server is running the software, or is this a proprietary software? How'd you get this on the browser?
Mike, I
built
may
it.
let you answer that.
We spent a lot of time building it. So right now it's obviously very different than what you're all used to. You're looking at something directly in a browser, so you don't have to open up another piece of software. You can do that, just launching the case right from your prescriptions. You don't have to go anywhere. So it was a pretty large development feat to get us to where we're at right now. Because I haven't seen anything else like it before.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still in development, which probably means our developers in there right now developing it. So it is not behaving the way we want it to right now. But you can imagine, ultimately, you're able to trim the model, add the base, and then you're going to be able to position the label on the model. So you're able to add the patient name, prescription ID, and you can actually customize text. So the whole idea is to be able to do everything with an EasyRX. You're not going to be able to move teeth with this initial, I guess, the first wave of the EasyRX 3D, but this will help with 90% of the cases that are coming through for you.
Michael, is that part of the free program, or is that an extra cost to the lab?
It's great questions. So this would actually be an enhancement in EasyRX. So we have a few different plans. This would be part of our standard plan for a lab, which is only $100 a month.
But with the free version, we still get to clean the scans that come in, do the scrubbing?
Absolutely.
Okay. And we get to view it and scrub it. But then we would have to export it out to a software to do all the stuff you were doing just now.
Correct.
Okay.
So you could still download the files from EasyRX, so they're attached, and then you would have to export them over to your software that you're currently using.
Okay.
So let's go back to the case. So we, essentially everything looks good. We're ready to, send this back to the practice. If we're shipping back the model and we're shipping back the appliance, we can go in, add tracking information, and then save the case. And that ultimately is going to complete the case and send that back over to the practice side of EasyRX. So when the practice logs back in, the case is going to show that it's shipped, and they can log in, view the case, and actually track the case through EasyRX.
Like they could put the FedEx or UPS number for that case.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Track it that way. Okay.
Yes, sir. And practices love that because they like to see, obviously where things are in real time. And if you're sending a courier delivery, you would just leave the tracking information blank. But that would show that the case is being sent back to the practice. And then when the practice receives it from your lab, they'll click Received from Lab. And then ultimately click that it's delivered to the patient when the patient comes in for their next appointment.
So when they call and say, "Where's this case?" and you delivered it 2 weeks ago, you can look on here and say, "You checked it in 2 weeks ago," right? So they could track that themselves. Anybody else have that problem?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So, yep. So let's say they wanted to do a date range search on what's been checked in, and they want to go back, a few weeks ago. They can go back and search for cases on specific dates.
Half the time it's a front girl who doesn't want to get up and go to the
Right.
bathroom.
Yeah, it's the front. Like,
She'd rather just place a quick phone call and let you sit around.
yeah.
Yeah, Mike. I think Mike is able to share his screen and show the 3D module. If y'all don't mind, Mike takes the controls
Sure.
here. That would be great.
Just jump in here and share my screen.
Does this software, we have just transitioned to Zero accounting program, XERO. Are you able to somehow move these prescriptions or make a copy of these prescriptions? Like we'll scan in a copy of the actual prescription to an invoice. Do you have any connector to any kind of accounting program with this at all, or do we need to print it out, scan it, manually, just like we would if we had a hard copy?
Sure. You want me to answer this, Thomas?
Yeah, that would be great.
So we have two integrations with accounting systems. We have an integration where we push all of that information, including all the invoices, all of the pricing, into QuickBooks, and we also have an integration that goes into Xero as well. So Xero has a really slick process as far as pulling in data. So we integrate. We're able to export data out of EasyRX, and then Xero has an import feature where we can import all the data in very quickly, so that instead of doing all of your invoicing in Xero, it's now pushing all the invoices from EasyRX into Xero.
Excellent. I'm trying to get DLAT on Zero to move it over. So yeah.
Okay, can you guys see my screen here
Yes.
of the model?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have our model here, and again, we can take some of these little guys and start to trim a model. I'm just going to go a little quickly here. I don't have a mouse. I'm working on a MacBook here. But we can define where we want to trim this base to. And then we'll trim the model. So what we normally do at our lab is we're taking everything and we're bringing it into Ortho Analyzer and working that way. So we have to export, we have to download, we have to, well, the integration helps us as well, but we certainly, this certainly is going to improve the actual workflow. So I'm able to trim the model, especially if we're doing a lot of invisibles, or depending on, what the type of appliance is. And then for those of you who are 3D printing, you know that you have to add a base to it. So we have to make the model watertight. So here I can add a base. We can create either a regular base or a hollow base as well, as far as saving material. We can create the base height that we need to, so we can have some of these preset options. We can also decide what that wall thickness is going to be if we're going to be doing a hollow model. So we have a ton of options here. So I'm just going to do a regular base type here. We can position the cutting plane if we want to. I'm just going to let it do its thing and just add the base. It won't be the prettiest thing because of my lack of cutting skills here, but you'll be able to see what it's able to do. So, obviously it took a couple seconds here, and you can see that we now have a base as well. directly onto the onto the model. So unfortunately, Ortho Analyzer, if a lot of you are familiar with that, they don't give you a really easy way to put a name on a model. So a lot of times, you have to bring it into NetFab and you have to emboss the name directly onto the model here. So this one right here, while I'm directly in here, I can put an RX ID on there, put a patient name on there. It's going to give me some options based off of some of the feature set, and we can position a first label here. So let's just put a label here and put a label there. And then we can put a second label on there if we want. And so you can see it put the prescription ID on there as well as the first initial and the last name. And then I can add this label directly to the model. So I haven't spent much time here at all. I took this this model went directly into EasyRX 3D because it's all connected within this ecosystem. So we're able to share this data between the prescription information and to the actual model itself.
So it's just pulling the info from that script.
It is, yeah. Yeah, so it pulls it directly from the prescription. So you don't have to sit there and type in the name, of course.
Is there an option of adding a custom label?
Yeah, so you can do a custom text right here, so you can add whatever you want onto it, depending on, whatever suits the case at hand. So again, it's still, it's still in its beta release. So right now I'm stalled a little bit here, but you guys get the idea that you can pretty much put everything you want onto the model itself.
Yes.
So you guys can switch over back to Thomas.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Can y'all hear me okay? Awesome. So I guess, any questions that y'all have so far? I mean, any thoughts or questions that we can help you out with?
How does this work if you're not printing in your lab and you're wanting to have a third party do your printing for you? Is it just a matter of forwarding the information and attached files to the third party?
Sure. So we have a feature built in called Share with Colleague. And so let's go to a checked in case. So we'll view the case. And then there's a Share with Colleague feature right here. And we have several labs that do this. So you can send this over to, let's say you're using a third party to print the models. You can share the file with that lab or the facility who's doing that. And they have 24 hours to view it and a limited access point. So that's an easy way for you to be able to share those and within EasyRX.
Do they get the prescription and the scan and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They do.
Do they don't need an EasyRX account?
Not for this feature.
Okay.
Again, it's a limited time frame, so they only have access to it for 24 hours through email, along with the scans.
Is it necessary for them to have the script as well, or, can you just, once you prep that model, got the name written on it, utilizing all your software there, can you not just save that file and then send that straight to them, or is this just simpler to do it this way?
Mike, did you hear that question? I
I didn't.
Oh,
Question is it necessary to send them the entire script? Some third-party printers, they're not necessarily going to want all that information or to go through it. Once you've gone in, looked at the model, trimmed it, put the name on it, is there not a way just to send that file directly to the third-party printer?
Mike, what's the answer there?
No,
Can they
yeah, when you
send
share,
just the file
yeah,
itself?
no, you can't. When you share with a colleague, you're sharing all the data that goes on there, so they would get access to the prescription information, to the files. In that situation, what I would do is I would probably just download it and then upload it directly into their portal. That way, you have your models all set for you, and they're able to get it without any other piece of information having to do with the models.
Yeah, and it's not a
Right.
URL they go to is just a web page that they visit that's only open for 24 hours.
Yeah, essentially, you're just getting a URL access based off of what the encoded URL in the email that they get, which just takes you and gives you that information to the patient, which has everything all on the view page.
And when they click on the STL file, that's gonna be the new file that you, say if you had to go in and clean it up, you put a name on it, you know, and have it already prepped. When they have that script and then they go down and click on that file, is that the new file with the name on the model and closed the way you want it?
Thomas, do you know how we're handling the actual files with the file system and going back into the prescription?
So there's going to be, this is probably going to be a rough version of EasyFS, but we're going to have a filing system built in called EasyFS. So it'll be basically listed on your desktop, where anytime a patient's a scan is pushed in, we'll have a patient file that you can access. And so when you save, a new file, it will be, pushed into this filing system. So you'll have, the original file listed and then the trimmed
Got it. So you send
file
the
as well.
file to them at
Yep.
that point, and they'll get exactly what you created to your third party.
So does anybody else have any thoughts or questions about EasyRX?
Yeah, well, in trimming the model and doing that, are you also able to remove brackets and everything, or is that for the third party to do?
So if you're going to remove brackets, you probably have to go into a different piece of software.
Okay.
Right. Yep, definitely. And, ultimately we'd love for y'all to, are any of you currently using EasyRX? I guess that was, okay. So, we'd love for y'all to join our Connected Labs network, and creating an account's super simple. Our per script account, which is completely free to you, connects you into our network. And once we launch the 3D module, if that's something y'all would be interested in utilizing, again, that's only $99 a month. And then we can take a look at our premium and enterprise features. If y'all like to take a look at those, we can certainly do a demo of those for you as well at a later time. But, please feel free to reach out to me directly, as a follow-up, or if y'all like for me to follow up with you, I can do that as well. Gade, anything else we can provide on our end? Or Michael, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, if anybody has any questions, though, we can certainly go through those.
Michael, Thomas, this is Priscilla. Kate stepped out of the room for a second, so.
Oh, hey, Priscilla.
Okay.
Hey, anybody else have questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about the data storage, in the event of, we never want to think that our information would ever be lost as far as patient records. What kind of redundant system on the back end do you have protecting all of the data, patient files?
Michael, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So we have multiple servers that the data is on, and everything is encrypted at 256 SSL. So the data has redundancy throughout. We have backup upon backup, throughout our hosting company that we work with. We use a hosting company that, we use Amazon as a hosting company who hosts things. They were hosting Dropbox and Pinterest. Some of the biggest apps in the world are being hosted at Amazon. So we leverage their data centers. So we have multiple copies. So the data is going to be safe. And with the encryption that we have on there, we meet all of the ADA and HIPAA requirements for digital data storage.
That's good to know. Thank you for answering the question.
Is there a way to look up or research or find out what dentists or clients in the area are using EasyRX where we can reach out to them?
I couldn't hear that. Priscilla, you want to?
One of the attendees asked, is there a way for you to provide a local lab with doctors that are currently using EasyRX so they can reach out to them and want to be a part of their office?
Thomas?
So the question is, can we provide a list of doctors that are currently using EasyRX?
Yes.
You know, it's not a question I've had before. That's something I would have to actually discuss with our management to see if it's something that, you know, there might be some, I guess, information there that, you know, practices that don't, you know, necessarily want their information shared. So before I say yes to that, let me find out if that's something we could do.
Okay.
Is there any incentive, like for dental laboratories that are getting their doctors to use the application?
An incentive for the labs?
Basically,
Not currently. We don't really have anything in place as far as incentivizing labs to get them to sign up. But we're always open to suggestions on something like that. So I think the main thing is, you know, we're providing the software, the basic software at no cost to the labs. And so that's, you know, making it available. So if a practice wants to sign up and connect with you, you know, that's kind of the, I guess, the incentive right now, but we're certainly open to any ideas.
Is there a way to link the, I guess, the portal, the EasyRX, onto your, to like say my website? I mean, it's maybe a simple question of just actually they click on EasyRX, and then I guess they go in and log in, so they don't have to go always to EasyRX if they've got our website up and they're doing other things or shipping through that. Is it okay to put a link to that on our website? Do y'all have any issues with that?
Not at all. In fact, part of what we, you know, when you sign up with EasyRX, we're going to connect with you and provide training and support, but we're also going to provide links for your webpage that would link directly to the login page at EasyRX, and then also a sign up page. And we'll, you know, something I'll do is provide you kind of a bullet list of the features. A lot of our labs have a page dedicated to EasyRX. So it's totally something we'll help you with, and, you know, anything like that, we're happy to provide and assist with.
I got a sample on my website. If you want to have a full
Oh, we can do that,
show
yeah.
everyone, I'd be happy.
Yeah, Chris was saying he has a sample of that on his website that we can pull up. And I can share my screen here if you want.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh.
he's pulling up here.
Oh, Bryn Mawr Ortho.
Is that how you Bryn Mawr?
Bryn Mawr. It's www.bryn. Yep,
There it is.
And then, as you can see in the upper right is the link to the EasyRX, and then I got
nice triple copy scripts,
Right.
but they still want to use their little bitty things that you can't see magnifying glass.
Yep.
They even blow it up sometimes themselves so we can see details. Like, just use our script. But now it's one thing I liked about the idea of EasyRX is the parts library. It's starting to get everybody on the same page for the names of the parts.
Yes.
So, you know, the W spring, the Z spring, the recurve, you know, we all call them something different.
Standardizes everything.
Yeah, it standardizes, and that's one thing that the owner of the lab I work at, he liked. He wanted all the doctors, because we try to get the doctors all in the same design,
Yeah.
you know, default profile.
So, I didn't know it spend a couple of days, I think, just go through all the parts, and design the My EasyRX page, which I loved. And then I need to make one for like, I need to make templates for like each doc.
Oh yeah, that's
And they love that too, because all that they have to do is just click instead of drawing and doing this, that, and the other things like Dr. Smith up all. And so, you know, it's this, that, and that's it. So.
did y'all catch that from Chris?
No, it's hard to hear it from the back.
Okay. He was just talking about how it took a while for his doctors to switch to EasyRX, but once they did, they really enjoyed it. And you said you enjoyed setting it up,
Yeah.
your page, and so.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree with that. As soon as a doctor is able to see what it can do and what they're able to do, it changes their entire workflow. And you know, you have some doctors who are stubborn. You know, they just don't want to make a change. They don't want to explore it. But for those who I give a demo to and show how easy it is, especially when it comes to the stuff with the practices who are printing, it's a very simple transition. They don't have to download anything, upload anything. It comes with a prescription. Because even when they're going through, say, the iTero network, you still don't have a prescription to go along with it. So yes, you have the scans, but now they're faxing you over a prescription, and it just seems like a broken process. So EasyRx bridges all of that together. So when they see that, they really are jumping on board quickly. It just makes sense.
Absolutely. And I was going to add to that, you know, since I feel like over the past 6 months, we've really refined how we train and work with the practices to make it really easy for them to connect. And so I can't say that I've had anybody that's, you know, signed up. We offer a 21-day startup period to ultimately help get them on board before they've even started, you know, to pay for EasyRX. And we haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't had anybody who's discontinued using it beyond that 21-day period.
Now I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. So are y'all? Oh, the templates. Does anybody? Can y'all show that for the doctors?
Sure.
Quick?
So you can actually go in, either the practice can go in and create their own templates. And this is something that we help a practice do right now. As part of, you know, that startup period, we'll go in and create, let's say, their most 10 used appliances. Or on the lab side, you can go into configurations and create templates for your practices. So, you know, let's say we want to go and create a template for, I guess, what's a good example? Maybe just an RPE. We would type RPE into our parts library, and this brings up every RPE that we have listed. And so, let's say we want to do a bonded RPE, but we wanted to call it something different. We could go in and call it a bonded RPE, yeah, upper. And then we can assign that to a specific practice. We could assign it to all of our practices. We could assign it to a specific practice. And we can also hold back their credentials. So if we didn't want the practice to be able to copy that as a template, if it was like a custom appliance that was specific to our lab, we can do that and set that on our side, on the lab side.
What is the price point for the doctor? You've got a doctor that you're trying to enroll to move over. What's it gonna cost them? That's the question they'll ask.
Yeah.
You're asking pricing? Sorry, I
On the
barely
doctor
hear.
side.
On the doctor side, so you've got a doctor, you'd like him to start using EasyRX to communicate with the lab, and they're gonna ask how much.
Sure. So what we found is, there are 3 different types of pricing. We have a per script plan, which is basically pay as you go. But I feel like over the past 5 months, the amount of people that are signing up just for per script has really gone down because, with standard and premium, if they have Dolphin, Cloud9, or OrthoTrack, we have an integration that's going to save them a lot of time, and those are only included in the standard and premium. Plus, with the standard, it gives them up to 50 prescriptions to commercial labs, and then with the premium, it's up to 100. So per month, it's 49. For standard, premium is 99, and we actually have some specials that we're running right now. So if they wanted to sign up for an annual subscription for premium, it's less than $1,000. It's $895. So, and then for standard, it's $492.
What happens if they sign up for standard and they write 52 scripts that month?
Did you say what happens if they sign up for standard and they want to switch? Is that what you're saying?
No, and they write, instead of 49, they write 52 scripts that month. What's the extra cost over?
Sure. So
the price point?
it's up to, so if they wrote 49, then it would still be, the price. If they wrote 52 prescriptions, then it's $1.29 for any overage.
Okay.
Per script, basically.
Do you have
And then sorry, go
do
ahead.
you have many that start on the per script plan and then I guess this would apply to lab side too. Do you have many that start on the first one and then what's the transition to the next step? Is it just a sign up and everything gets unlocked?
Yeah, so basically, and I've seen this happen, Mike. I'm sure you've seen it more than I have, but I mean, let's say a practice kind of wants to dip their toe in the water and try it out. We ultimately give them that 21-day trial period, which they can select any plan during that period. So if they have practice management integration and they want to try out the standard plan or the premium plan, they can do that, and they're not locked in, so they can switch plans anytime. But if they want to start off with the per script plan, they could start there and then switch up to standard or premium. Really at any time, they control that within the interface. And there is, we have several labs who actually pay for the prescriptions for their practices. That is an option. They see the value in EasyRX. It saves them so much time. So if they have a practice that they want to pay for, we certainly, make that available to you if you want to do that.
What about is there like electronic signature where the doctor can set a setting to where it has to go through him before it gets sent or approved by him? Do y'all have something like that set up?
Sure. So,
yeah, like an assistant fills it out and then he goes and signs off on it.
Right. So what I've found with a lot of practices is, let's say that they, the assistant's working on the case. What we have is a save tab. So at the end of the day, if the doctor wants to go in and approve every case, let's say they're doing 10 cases a day, this save tab would have those 10 cases, and they could go in at the end of the day click the edit button. This isn't a good example. Let me go to one that actually has a prescription. So let's go to this one for Anthony McConnell. They can go back in, review the case, check any notes, and then click proceed to submit. So before the case can be submitted, they do have this checkout page. Technically, this is the doctor's signature before the case is submitted. So it's really dependent on the workflow at the practice.
And they can have multiple users on their account, like a technician user or an assistant user.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So under their account settings, they can go in and create separate user accounts. So if they have, somebody, a little in-house lab tech, somebody working there, they can do that. They can create different user accounts. But there is one admin account. So again, it's really up to the practice, and the size of the practice and how many people are going to be working in it.
Now, I'm sorry, I'm asking all the questions. Do you have anybody? Technician tracking. Could we track technicians' progress? Like, can they log in? Hey, I bent the wire on this case, and then we can get a report from our technicians.
Mike, I'm going to let you answer that question.
Sure. So we have a good amount of production tracking within the system. You can create departments. You can run reports based off of production of all the technicians. There's a good amount of flexibility in there that creates spreadsheets that you can look in Excel. You can do a lot of sorting. You can. I know at our lab we track all of our wire benders, so we know exactly what they're doing, how many classes they did on a certain day, from a certain time period. And then it helps to evaluate kind of who's doing what and how much within that time frame.
So does anybody have a per piece technician that you pay them to wire bend not hourly, but just per piece? We used to have that. I thought this would be a good system to track that.
We do have just basically a hand sheet that I ask, for them to write down everything they do. Of course, that's still, can get muddled, but, so we can track production. But that's an interesting question. If they can somehow log in on the digital sheet as it's done.
So, like, they would need a cheap computer as long as it has internet access by their workbench, and they just would log in when a case is done.
Yeah, essentially, we use Chromebooks. They're $200.
Yeah.
They only connect to the internet, and they just run Google. So we have a bunch of those, and they're connected to $25 barcode scanners, and technicians just go to them with their stacks, and they just check everything out. And it works really well. It's cheap. It's easy.
So
We have a new technician now that's doing some work, and we can track his progress, just to see how he's doing in the first couple months, which we have to do weekly, as you guys know, when you're training new technicians.
So they just scan the case pan.
Yeah, they do. They scan the prescription, because each prescription that gets that's on the pan has a barcode.
Okay. And can you release this to the doctor so the doctor can go, it's been through wire bending and it's in the acrylic phase, if you wanted to release that to them, that information?
Well, that information's on every prescription. It shows a history of what departments it's went through, making sure that all the technicians are pushing it through, so that the doctor can see that it is in a certain category. Here it is in the production cycle, and they can see that it's been through the proper channels of production as well.
Is there they bent the wrong thing, and we got to send it back through and scan again?
I'm sure that happens all the time. But what it really is, the way that it's set up, it's a user-friendly way of doing it where, they'll scan it out. If for some reason they make a mistake, they can't scan it out again. It can only happen once, just to prevent multiple people in the multiple departments, scanning out multiple things that they may not have done.
What have you done in your lab that changed the most as you started implementing this software?
I think, well, the biggest thing for us is establishing a digital workflow. We started this a while ago because we knew that it was coming. We had to do something. So for me, everything is about efficiency. I didn't want to have the market tell me what to do. I wanted to make sure that I had something in place. So for us, the biggest transition was creating something that streamlined the whole process, that worked within a laboratory environment. So I think that's the hardest transition is creating a workflow. Because then you get into, okay, do I open Dropbox? Do I get another HIPAA compliant way of getting scans? How do I manage all my prescriptions? I got digital prescriptions coming in. How do I know? I don't want to lose any. How do I do that? So once we had all of this figured out, it all got implemented into EasyRX, and then that took us, that really helped give us the advantage of our efficiency. So it was hard in the beginning, but once we did it, everything's streamlined now.
Excellent. Well, I didn't mean to. I was gone for a little bit. Did y'all finish y'all's presentation and this is Q&A right now?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? Oh. All right. Well, Michael Wright and Thomas, thank you so much for coming on board with us and helping us explain this. What are the next steps for somebody? Unless you've already done that, they've already done that. The next steps, if someone's interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone's interested in signing up, you can either contact me directly. I don't know, Kate, if there's a way that you can provide my information to them, or
Yes.
I can reach out to them directly. But you can go to our website and actually go to the sign up tab and go to lab sign up. And here's where you can select any of the plans. So just click on the plan that you'd want to select and fill out this information, and your account's created. And we'll actually follow up with you as soon as you've created your account. We'll reach out to you and schedule a time just to kind of go through everything with you one-on-one.
Okay, well, excellent. Again, appreciate you, and we're going to close out the session. If y'all want to stay on, if anybody wants to walk up there and talk to them, you can. But other than that, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Did y'all eat lunch yet? Or did y'all skip lunch? Did you want to